All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast out there, and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here, alongside Nick, and we are coming to you for this Fulham match review. That's right, Chelsea doing the business, getting it done. No controversy on the day whatsoever. The cleanest type of victory that Chelsea could have asked for on the day. Everything above board, nothing in the balance. It was all just a decisive victory for our Blues, but not really, Nick.
Well, it was decisive in some ways, Dan, and I think we'll probably talk about that. I do just want to quickly say, obviously, a lot of notice around the sunglasses and shit on the show the last couple of weeks. A lot of people reached out over the last couple of days. I was in the hospital for an infection. I'm back. I'm feeling better. Just want to say thanks for all the outreach. And yeah, not been a fun couple of weeks on my end, but we're definitely on the right track here. So just wanted to knock that out before we dove into it, because a lot of people were very, very kind and sent a lot of well wishes.
As they should, because, we don't like any members of the LIBP team on the sidelines, potentially needing to go to the therapy room and treatment here. Not what we enjoy. But look, Chelsea, we're trying to bring you some cheer. Again, it was a 2-0 victory over Fulham in this one to continue the campaign for a Premier League title. That's right, Chelsea. I mean, at time of recording, at least, on top of the table at 7 points. It's going to change very rapidly in the next 1 to 2 hours, potentially. But just for a moment, you have to enjoy it. You have to celebrate it. In this one, though, we will be talking about some of the VAR controversy that occurred in this game. It was the headline of most mainstream sporting articles in and covering this match. We do have an opportunity to talk about João Pedro's continued performance and a really strong defensive performance from this Chelsea unit as well. And then look, we're recording this on August 31st. There's a limited amount of time. The transfer window is still open for teams in England to sign players. There's also some opportunity to sell some players still as well, or loan them out, that Chelsea are trying to get done. Some of that may be a little dated by the time you listen to it, just because of what's going on in the market. But I mean, there was some pretty big stuff about Nicolas Jackson after the Liam Delap injury news information came out that took over everyone's Saturday, as they were trying to do anything other than focus on Chelsea after the wonderful win in the morning U.S. time. So look, we're going to get into all that. But before we do that, as always, we have some 3-row match reviews to help set the stage for this one from our Discord community with Kyle, with set piece coach, highlighting the fact that 4 of Chelsea's 6 Premier League goals this season have come from corners, which is a very, very wonderful season over season improvement, or multiple season improvement, to be fair. You had breaded shrimp with the Labor Day barbecue.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice.
I figured you like that one there. Derek with the sweet, sweet tears, talking about the tears of basically every other team, not even just in the Premier League, but maybe in world football, really not enjoying any luck coming Chelsea's way. And then Brad with Nico's round trip. It was supposed to be one way, and it is now a round trip ticket that the man got.
Yep. So someone went into the old Sky Scanner and hit the wrong tab. I think that's kind of what happened there.
All right, and then Nick, what did you go for?
Uh, it kind of feels like we might make shirts about this at some point someday. But what about campaign for Chelsea? We've had the campaign against Chelsea before, famous Mourinho quotes, and many of our own podcasts talking about how the refereeing association sometimes doesn't look so kindly upon Chelsea. So far, so good this year, baby. So campaign for Chelsea. Let's go.
So are you saying they're going to gift us a Premier League title? Is that what's about to happen?
Dan, I do not believe that is what is going to happen.
Okay.
But if we had even and evens, honors even calls on the year, that would be a vast improvement from where we have been historically in the Premier League. And so, so far we're a little on the positive side of that ratio. It will come down. Just mark my words about that. But even if we ended even, I'd feel pretty good.
All right, well, I went with punch card redeemed because, as you know, I believe VAR works on a loyalty point system, and you have to get a couple of bad decisions to ultimately cash it in for a couple of good ones. So I think we had saved up 1 or 2 full punch cards. We had 8 or 9 in a row that had gone against us, and we redeemed that 10th one for a value plus back in our direction. That
To get a
I
full
think
result on the punch card, you have to have many, many bad results. I mean, that is a tough one. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it though, because I think that's the first thing we want to just kind of clue in and key on here is that it was a day of VAR. So even though there were some performances, some generally strong performances of note
Yeah.
from the both starting 11 and also some substitutes off the bench, it all kind of got started in the 21st minute when Fulham had a goal disallowed for a stamp, a touch, a movement into the foot of Trev Chalobah. Like, I mean, there's a broad spectrum of definition here, but ultimately, really cracking goal from Fulham to open it up. It
Mhm.
definitely felt like it was probably the right type of result at that moment. Like, I think Fulham definitely came into the game with a little bit more of an oomph. Chelsea's still struggling with some of the conditioning as it was coming back from this really weird preseason where we played a couple games. We had a weird break relative to other teams that kind of had a natural progression into their season. And then there's the call to go to the monitor. And were you expecting a call to the monitor, Nick? I mean, like when you saw it roll out, and you said, "Oh, okay, they're showing some footage. They're gonna potentially be discussing this." How did you feel? And do you feel as if it was a soft, super soft, Charmin soft? Like how soft of a foul here are we calling this one?
We need to get the softness o meter on the scale here. Look, this for me was not enough to warrant taking the goal away. And we were kind of talking about this before the show. I think Chelsea fans are all over with a number of opinions. If you are on Twitter on a game day, if you're in our Discord on a game day, there's a lot of people who disagree about a lot of different things. People disagreed about this. Some people thought it was absolutely a foul. Some people thought it was not a foul. I'm definitely more on the latter than the former. This to me was not enough to take away the goal. So that is number one. Number two, Trev Chalobah last week, kind of on the second goal that Pedro Neto scores, blocks off a player, right? In a similar fashion, uses his body to get into the way. Doesn't get stamped on, but does have contact there. And they did not rule that enough to be, to stop a goal from being scored. So it's kind of like not only are people upset about that, they're upset about the week's previous call. And then I think the third part here, which is we're hearing reports that VAR might have looked at this in a way that wasn't befitting of whatever standard they claim to have. Now, I think we would all agree their standards are incredibly low. It's a low bar to crawl over for how to intervene in a match. But this is a weird one, Dan, in the fact that in real time, in regular speed, it looked worse than when they slowed it down. It I thought for sure, like in the buildup when the thing actually happened in regular speed, it was a foul. It looked like there was a little bit of elbow involved too. It wasn't just the stamp. But when you slowed it down, you actually saw that it was just there was not much for Muniz to do. There wasn't anywhere else for him to put his foot. It wasn't an egregious move in my eyes. It wasn't like he outwardly stamped on Trev or like tried to hurt him. It was him trying to do a little bit of a pivot with his feet to get into a better position. And Trev just happened to be closing in at the same time. And I personally don't feel like this is outside of the realm of like normal football stuff that happens. Add to the fact that the referee doesn't call it on the field, right? He lets play go. And I look at this to me and all those things that I just talked about combined, it's not a foul for me. It's not enough to disallow a goal. And we were very, very fortunate to get it called back. I think the thing that now people are talking about is the believe me, the commentary both at halftime with Rebecca Lowe, Robbie Musto, Robbie Earl, and the commentary. Martin Tyler didn't let this go for like a full 45 minutes after the call was made and was still jeering about it in the 90th minute. Everybody was upset about this because a young kid scored his first goal. That also shouldn't be the standard of whether a call should be made or not, right? Whether you want the story to be good does not impact what a referee should do. The real thing that we should be talking about here, and sorry to go on a long rant about this, is like how going to the monitor has basically meant one thing in
Yeah.
this modern age of VAR, and that is that the call, there wasn't enough for the VAR to make it. They need the referee to make it. The referee normally will go over, and whatever the call was on the field, it is more likely to be overturned than upkept. And we have been begging for a long time for the referees to make more independent decisions at the monitor, to go look at it, to go make a call. And I think there is a fair amount of fear introduced into the refereeing ecosystem that if they get called over the monitor, it's because they missed something, and that means they must do the opposite thing. I All this means that we need better referees with better decision making. That's it. It's been the case for the entire time. So sorry to
Yeah.
go on a rant, but that's where I'm at.
No, I mean, I think you clued in on a couple things there. One, the nature of going to the monitor does seem to be the Uno reverse on a decision. You have the situation as well. Friend of the pod, Ben Jacobs, reported the fact that Michael Salisbury replaced by John Brooks as the VAR for the Liverpool Arsenal game. It was an acknowledgement that Salisbury, apparently from the PGML, made an error in disallowing Fulham's goal at Stamford Bridge on Saturday. And then they mentioned that Salisbury's intervention was not in line with PGML's high bar for VAR intervention, and understands Howard
Whoa.
Webb contacted Fulham directly yesterday with, I guess, a sorry, mate, like things happen, shit happens type of moment, which the post apology on these type of things is, I think, probably one of like the worst elements to it as well, where it's like you kind of didn't get it done right. You're now going back to apologize. I mean, 3 points could be huge for Fulham at the end of the season. It also could be huge for us. And so
Mhm.
I think there's a lot to take in kind of consideration there. It does feel as if there's an element of the ref going to the monitor should be encouraged to re-examine moments. I think that is a very good thing that we're seeing more moments where the ref is being indicated, hey, please go take another look. But that
Yeah.
look should be an opportunity to truly make an independent decision and not necessarily feel as if it's a forced decision due to a miss that they made and the fear that you kind of called into it. I think that kind of takes us into the incident too, when then Chelsea are awarded the handball for, ultimately, Trev kind of Trev is there, everybody's there, they're all watching like this handball come up. The moment when it was live, the way that their hands shot up, like they were kids in a classroom who knew the answer to like the teacher's extra credit question, like they all shot up so quickly. Everybody like dialed in on it. And that was another one where it had a very lengthy VAR review, more so because I think they wanted to understand, well, João Pedro seemingly had his hand touched the ball as well, but was that enough of a touch to potentially override what was a massive increasing of
Yeah.
the body that occurred from the Fulham player? And this is another one where if it were just the touching of the ball from the Fulham player, you would argue 100%, yes, Stonewall penalty of that issue. But then you add in this complexity of Joao Pedro, being in a situation, his hand grazes the ball. Like, is that enough for this to be reviewed? And so you get a secondary kind of moment here. You don't feel necessarily great that like you had to win this way, but winning anytime as a Chelsea fan feels really, really good. And to the point you made earlier, sometimes when seasons of mistakes have gone against you, getting two in one game does feel very nice.
Yeah, I mean, look, the actual like the handball that's called here, I think is the right call. Right, Sessegnon clearly makes himself bigger. His arm is in an unnatural position, elbows flared out. He's basically creating like a barrier for himself with his arm kind of draped down to his extended leg. This is not the way you would normally run or jump, right? Like that is it's not standard, right? And the ball was played from a distance where I don't think you could say, oh, it's proximity either, because he clearly had time to jump and try and make himself bigger. I think the issue with this one is definitely the Joao Pedro handball, because while he was in the midst of three Fulham players and trying to, do everything he could to control the ball and make a pass out, and he is very, very good in close control situations, he still does touch the ball with his hand. and his hand's not in a particularly natural position to, do that. So this is another one where I was like, I think the end call is right. I think why people are upset is because we already got one, and there is a question of doubt about this. And again, whatever this quote unquote high bar is for VAR intervention, spare me with that, because we have been summarily screwed over by whatever this high bar was before. I think there were a lot of people who remember the Timo Werner goal from 5 years ago that was disallowed after like a minute and a half of play, was brought back for a foul that happened a few minutes ago. And all of the handball situation that happened with Connor and Suchek in the West Ham, like, there are plenty of examples of us getting screwed over in similar situations. This one was less controversial than I think the first one, and so I think if you want to put it on the like a grading scale, like this is a C, the other one was an F. But all we're asking is for a higher standard of refereeing. I've said it for years. It's £1 billion league and 10-cent referees. And I know they have an incredibly difficult job. I know the game has never moved faster than it is currently moving. We've never had better athletes in the Premier League. The decisions are more snappy than ever before. But the investment in refereeing infrastructure has not kept up with the investment in the rest of the sport. And there is nothing I'd rather have than a level playing field across the board for everybody to get even 80% of these calls right. Like, I'm not even asking for perfection. Just give me 8 out of 10 calls that are right. You're always going to have a couple that are off kilter, that are wrong, whatever, that you have to make an apology call to someone for. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, if I were Marco Silva yesterday, the only thing I would have said is, why don't the referees have to do this press conference too? Why don't they have to get up here after the game and explain themselves? The VAR referee calls in via Zoom because I know they're remote, and then the actual referee on the field talks through the controversial calls in the game, what they saw, and what that matters. And the reason I think that is a good idea is because, one, I think it will introduce the humanity back into it. Referees are not robots. Sometimes their angle gets blocked out. Sometimes the VAR, the TV angles can be misleading, all this sort of stuff. So they can walk us through those decisions, much like the F1 guys do after the race when they see all the highlights. And they're like, oh, that was crazy. That was difficult. And then two, I think it will hold everyone accountable to get better. Hey, man, you really missed a couple calls here. Or, hey, you missed one call and you got the other one right. Can you walk us through this? And Rob Jones would have had to sit up there and eat some humble pie for a couple minutes. And I think that's a good thing for everybody. If Enzo Maresca is responsible and held to an account for that, and Marco Silva is held to account for that, why aren't these referees? They're the neutral third party on the field. So I could talk about this all day. I just really hope it gets better. One, because we will be summarily screwed over this season by referees. It is a guaranteed death taxes and that. Second, I just want the game to be better. There was so much time that we weren't playing football yesterday. So much time. Like,
Yeah.
I want to play football, man. I want this game to be fun. Can we do something, please?
Well, we will have more fun talking about some of the strong performances from Chelsea players on the day after our first ad break. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, another day, another Brazilian scoring a goal for Chelsea Football Club. Feels like a bit of a throwback era, Nick, and we are here for it. João Pedro with another great goal for Chelsea,
Yes.
another non-penalty goal,
Yes.
and that 5 that he needs to hit to exceed his best ever Premier League season looks to be well within striking distance for him, with many games left in the Premier League season at this point. I clocked that at 35 more games where he'll have an opportunity to score a goal, non-penalty related. Didn't actually even take the penalty. Enzo was the one who picked up that penalty ball and moved it forward. So, I mean,
Every game that he plays, it's as if he heard the podcast where I was like, I don't understand this move, and I was like, all right, fuckface. Here's more to understand. Yeah, look, he is our best player right now. I think that is pretty easy as a call to make. I don't think it was as good of performance yesterday. Obviously, I don't think the team performed nearly as well as they performed against West Ham, or even Palace in some cases. But he was one of three players that stood out to me on the day that really helped carry us over the line. And I'll tell you, like, these set pieces and the fact that he has two set piece goals from like right in front of the box at the most opportune angle to head the ball into the net, that is skill. They are working on this clearly in training. Like, obviously, we can talk about the set piece coach and all the jokes that we made last season and all the jokes that we're taking back this season about it, but the timing has to be perfect to get those opportunities. And he is just in the right place at the right time with the right heading trajectory, with the right power. That is a skill, man. And it's not even the skill that we thought we were getting when we were buying him. I didn't, there was no suggestion when we bought him that he was going to be an expert header of the football. And he's out here not looking like prime Drogba. I mean, Drogba was a whole different header of the football than anyone else I've ever seen. But like, he's out here doing some really impressive stuff. And
Hmm.
you add to the fact that he's playing this number 10 role because Cole Palmer's out and we haven't made all of our signings yet. We don't have all the proper configurations in the attack that we want to have. And I just I'm blown away with what I'm seeing from this guy, Dan. I just really I'm impressed with the movement. I'm impressed with the passing. I'm impressed with the timing. I think there's some work defensively to do, but he's going to grow into that just like everyone else grew into it last year. Super super impressive. He's been our best player through 3 games, and if Nat's prediction is right, he will be our player of the season. So we'll see.
Well, he's definitely putting himself in easy contention for that conversation with the short start to his a short and positive start to the campaign for him. I mean, again, one goal, the expected goals he had individually today 0.66, 53 touches, 88% pass accuracy with one key pass. And he had 0 out of 4 dribble attempts successful, which is not necessarily great. 2 shots on target, 1 shot blocked, 5 out of 13 ground duels won. He was the actually Sofa score had him as the second best player on Chelsea behind Trev Chalobah, and he was the Premier League's player of the match for this game, which was what I felt like was the appropriate decision there. I do think you're right in that, like, he is kind of an everywhere player in that 10
Hmm.
and gets a lot more freedom. I do
Hmm.
think it'll be interesting. We'll talk about the Nico Jackson stuff a little bit later and Liam Delap injury information. But if he gets onto the pitch with Nico Jackson up top, I think that provides also some very interesting combinations and considerations for what João Pedro will be able to do in this Chelsea side, particularly with just how fluid he is and how he's able to find and unlock his own space with, effectively what has been a decent Fulham defense in prior years. I mean, it's not necessarily the best in the Premier League, but I mean, Anderson and Massey are both good enough Premier League defenders to kind of put somebody to task, put somebody to challenge. It's also very helpful when you have Estevao on the right hand side, who was taking Bassey to town every time he had an opportunity to bring him to the back. The back of the box. He was very much enjoying that. And we're also seeing, Pedro Neto continue to, find space, find form. So I think in general, I still walk away from this. I think it was a frustrating game for most people. It was a little start and stop because of the penalty situations too. But really throughout the entirety of the second half, I think in general, Chelsea just looked completely dominant, in control, not really fussed in any way, shape, or form that like this was going to be walking away from us in any capacity. I mean, though frankly, when you look at it, we had 3 big chances in the first half. In the second half, it was a little bit more balanced, more so I think from that last like 10 to 15 minutes from Fulham, where they did kind of try to press, try to kind of make an effort in that moment. But we had the ball more, we held the ball more, we limited their chances, we limited their actual shots on target. I mean, they had 11 shots, 3 on target. We had 13 shots, we had 6 on target. So like we did what we needed to do. And I do think too, Nick, that comes down to just the defensive unit playing extremely well together as a cohesive unit that really, really, I think gets you excited, particularly considering that it was Malo Gusto on the right hand side, it was Trev Chalba, it was Tosin, and Marco Correa. Not the lineup that, like, post Club World Cup, we were thinking was going to go run into every Premier League game to assert dominance from the back line.
Yeah, I think the first half of the defense looked really, really disjointed and kind of all over the place. Fulham had a few breaks, and obviously one of those breaks was called back for the VAR thing and all that sort of stuff that we talked about earlier. Second half was a lot more controlled. It was clear that Maresca got into him at halftime and wanted to kind of reestablish our normal pattern of play and be on the ball more and get the defense into the game. There was the unbelievable pass from Trev Chalaba into João Pedro that he wasn't able to chip over the goalkeeper and convert. But that would have been an early goal of the season contender for sure because the pass was just exquisite. You started to see more and more of that as we went. And I think that to me is, the sign of a good team where they can struggle for a half, not look good at all. I called it out on Twitter. I thought that they were really, really poor in the first half by our standards. They looked not up for the races, like they didn't train all week or something. And then we, of course, know that Moise Caicedo didn't train basically at all during the week because of all the injury concerns and we're missing key pieces and all that sort of stuff. But the second half was a lot more kind of closer to our standard. And, once the penalty goes in, it's 2-0. It's hard to see Fulham with that attack causing you too many issues after that. I mean, they are not a free scoring team right now. They still have some transfers to make to get that team up to scratch. And so, yeah, I think this was a little bit closer. I thought it was Malo Gusto's best game for a very long time in a Chelsea shirt, and he was probably my man of the match because I thought that he
It was a good
was,
performance. It was
yeah.
a very good performance.
Mhm.
I think actually what goes under the radar is in this game, there were a lot of really good individual performances that led to this 2-0 victory.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I really enjoyed what I saw from Malo Gusto today, and I think that's not a thing that we've said a whole lot recently. But Enzo Maresca has, I think, conceded to the fact that he is not going to do what Reece James is capable of doing from like an inverting fullback perspective. So if we know that and we understand that his capabilities are not the same, you have two options, right? You either change the way that you play to fit his strengths better and get the most out of his play style, or you sell him for someone else. What Chelsea have decided to do is number one, play him higher up the field, allow him to function more as a wing back, as an overlapper for Estevao, and to make that partnership a little bit stronger, to provide some extra cover defensively, because of course we know Estevao's not at the level yet defensively he needs to be. So that does balance out quite a bit. And you're not putting him in a position to have to play all the passes that an inverted fullback needs to play to get the team moving in the right direction. So we've shifted the way that we were playing last year, which was Cucurella was the one higher up the pitch making those calls. Now Gusto is up. Cucurella is playing a little bit more reserved to provide some cover. Caicedo is playing a little bit more reserved to cover off on some of the attacks that come down the right hand side, and we look much more balanced that way. And I'm really pleased with the way that Gusto's developing. Obviously, this kind of started during the Club World Cup where we
Yeah.
started to see this. He had a great performance in the final against PSG that allowed us to kind of bypass their midfield press. He is a player, Dan, that now has started two consecutive Premier League games in lieu of Reece James. It's not something we can overlook.
Well, I think the key part is when you have someone like Moises Caicedo who can drop back and effectively
Hmm.
play as a kind of a central part of the defense, and then you have someone like Trev Chalaba who, on the day against both Sessegnon and Iwobi, did not give them a lot of comfortable quarter to operate in. that gives Malagusto an opportunity to push forward on that right hand side. I mean, his average position was actually like right on the halfway line, whereas like Caicedo had a deeper position average. You know, you had Trev Chalobah who had a deeper, much deeper
Hmm.
average position, and his like area was like bright red from like the halfway line to the front of our box in terms of like where Trev Chalobah operated on the day, exactly where Sessegnon and Iwobi were and wanted to be. They couldn't get any goodness, which gave Gusto really an opportunity to be involved a little bit more. And I think that's what we're starting to see is that we're now finding, you know, I think Enzo Fernandez didn't have a great first half, but definitely kind of picked it up on the second half. Like you're starting to see some fitness come back into form for a couple players, like not for the entirety of a game, but you know, there's definitely a little bit that's starting to pop back up. I do think that this is Enzo Maresca, to your point, figuring out how he can best utilize his players, which he's going to be dramatically challenged by, considering we don't have a timeline for Cole Palmer's return. We now have the new Liam Delap injury information that came out post game, and he is going to have to figure out what is the best composition for this team post international break when the fixtures get fast and furious and there is no Conference League level team that you can rotate into and give players a day off on.
Yeah, I mean, can we talk about this? Because I think this is the biggest story of the season. Is fitness, injuries, and what happens next, right? Not just for Chelsea, for every team that is playing high level football this season.
Well, let's do that after our last ad break, and we'll get
Okay.
into the challenges around fitness and preparing for the remainder of the season. So stay tuned, bear back. All right, Nick. So you wanted to talk about the challenge that not only Chelsea is going to face, but I mean, we're recording this right now. And I mean, there's the news of like the Saliba injury in the Arsenal game, massive for their
Hmm.
season, massive for their defense. We have our own injury situation now with, Cole Palmer, no determinate date to come back, which could always be a little bit of gamesmanship to keep him out of the England national team for a 10-day period. So, but it
I don't
does
think
not
that.
feel
I don't
that's the
think that's
case.
it.
You have a Liam Delap injury, which reported initially as 6 to 8 weeks by Enzo Maresca, but friend of the pod, Matt Law, reporting that could be more than that. And the whole Nico situation that came out of that this weekend. Where do you want to go first?
I think just broad strokes here. This is a season to survive.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is you're coming off of, for Chelsea, an extended season. For some of the other European teams that played in the Club World Cup, an extended club season. But for the rest of international football, preparation for a World Cup coming up. Like people are playing, they've never played more football than they have in the last 5 years. This is aggressive in terms of high level, high intensity, real stakes football that people are playing. Not just a bunch of friendlies where you get to come in for 45 minutes and go out and you get whatever. It's high intensity stuff. You're actually playing real competitive matches at a scale hitherto unseen. Second thing that I bring up is the amount of injuries that will happen because of aforementioned schedule are going to be absurd this year. It's probably going to be the highest injury season since when we had the Winter World Cup a few years ago, where players were coming back, and we had the slew. I mean, we couldn't get healthy to save anything that year, right? I mean, that was our most injury plagued year, and that carried over into the following year. The team that wins the major honors this year might not be the best, but they will almost certainly be the healthiest. And I think that's just something to call out here. Chelsea are already, if you look at the injury list, already starting to pile up a little bit. Clearly, a lack of fitness in midfield with Caicedo and Fernandez not looking like their sharpest versions of themselves. Clearly, our center back situation with Levi, long term injury. West Fofana, long term injury. Benoit Badiashile, medium term injury. Reece James just getting back. Romeo Lavia still not being fit. You can start to like just pile this up. Add in our most dynamic player in Cole Palmer. Add in our real only proper number 9 in Liam Delap. And it gets scary pretty quick, man. Like it does get pretty frightening when you think about like this is only August. We're only talking about August. We're not talking about the festive fixtures in December when you play once every 3 days, or the weeks with Champions League high intensity matches at Bayern Munich, at home to Barcelona, all that sort of stuff. The team that will win the things will be the most healthy, have the most complete set of players, and they may not be the best. It could be a year for the upsets. It could be a year for a team that wasn't previously thought of to win things. And it means that you have to have depth and strength across the squad in ways that are obviously compliant with all the, various rules and regulations that exist within all the leagues, but allows you to have maximum flexibility for when shit hits the fan. And I think it will inevitably hit the fan this year.
Well,
Right.
let's talk about how the shit hitting the fan has already in fact happened. And again, we're recording this midday US time on the 31st of August. So the transfer window, depending upon when you listen to this, on the 1st of September may or may not already be closed. It does close at 7 p.m. British summertime this coming Monday, September 1st. And we will see what that in fact means. Just a couple quick hits. One, Garnacho officially confirmed. So if you want more information on that one, please go back and listen to our
Mhm.
special player preview special that we did. Sam and I, made sure to get ready for you and release. And there's some even very interesting elements like what Garnacho can bring to this team. And look, if you have a couple of attackers who are not going to be available for a little bit, bringing one in now doesn't feel necessarily the worst. And he is Premier League tested, which is not the case for some of the other players we brought in this season. So that's a nice thing to be able to say.
Sure.
The real headline story, though, Nick, is the Nico Delap situation, which happened over the weekend. Man, you were, just kind of taking a nice day to recover a little bit. I was hanging out on Coney Island, eating a Nathan's hot dog, and boy, oh boy, you get the news, that the Liam Delap injury is actually way worse than Enzo Maresca potentially thinks from Matt. And then you get the news after the Here We Goes, after the photos of Nico Jackson in Munich getting bussed over to take his medical, you're getting multiple reports that Chelsea have informed Bayern Munich, this was the Ornstein tweet, that they will not be proceeding with the proposed loan of Nico Jackson after the injury to Liam Delap. Striker traveled to Germany for Bayern Munich, but Chelsea requested that he return to London. And then it really kind of just all spiraled from there. You saw competing reports from airplanes don't go backwards, which I guess is technically true on a flight plan trajectory, but flight plans changed. So that's a reality. And then you had comments from Bayern Munich fans, from their media there. It said like, oh, what a terrible thing to be doing to the player. And the player's on a pretty long contract. The player has been told that they can go on loan. The situation changed. Chelsea said, actually, we're not going to do that loan anymore. Come back and play because we need you. And you're an employee in a job situation. I don't know. Feels like we did everything correctly other than like change our mind at the last minute, but that was predicated by an injury issue. And that's way better than going out and buying another striker in the last 24 hours that the window's open that you may or may not actually want.
Oh, man, I have so much to say about this. And like the fact that it's still not resolved this morning kind of frustrates me because I was really hoping to take a huge victory lap on Nico staying at Chelsea this summer. So I will not do that quite yet. First of all, this injury could not have happened at a better and or worse time, right? So Liam Delap, 6 to 8 weeks, probably longer. With I don't know if you've seen our luck with hamstrings over the last however many years, but it's not typically on the shorter end of the time scale. Usually it's longer. So I think that's part of the club's factoring is if it was really only like 4 to 6 weeks or a shorter recovery time, perhaps you don't go as bold as they did to cancel a loan that was already starting to become in progress. Second thing is, no papers were signed, no medical was done. The player's contract exists with Chelsea. I imagine, and I have total empathy here for a lot of different sides of this because they clearly orchestrated this deal. They wanted this thing to happen. The club wanted it to happen. The player wanted it to happen. The agent clearly wants to get paid from this happening. All that sort of stuff exists. I imagine that this is incredibly frustrating. I think if I was in Nico's position, I'd be like, "What the hell, man? I just got here. I just did the 3 hour flight. I, I now you want me now I'm not surplus to requirements. I'm really frustrated by that, and there are a lot of people saying, "Oh, he has an attitude issue." Dog, if you made a flight only to find out that the person you were going to surprise was at your house, you'd be like, "What the hell? What the hell, man? Like, what? Why would we?" It's not an attitude thing. The club and Nico decided this was the best thing for them, and then the club were like, "Actually, Nico, you probably are going to play and start if you come back to Chelsea. And more importantly, you have a 1 million year contract with us. We control what happens next. We are the club." So I don't care what the agent says. I don't care what his spiritual advisors say. I don't care about the Instagram quotes from a Meg Ryan movie. I don't care about any of this stuff. The fact remains that Chelsea Dan are in control of what happens to Nico. And there are three distinct possibilities and only three things that can happen here. First thing is Nico says, "All right, I'm super frustrated and it's going to take me a minute to calm down, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to play." My preferred option. Thank you. Second thing is Bayern Munich, if they want to control his contract, can do a silly little thing called buy him. Shell out the money, guys. You want he's an 80 million euro player. Come and get him. You want to control what happens to Nico next? Come and buy him. Done deal. The third thing is he and I think more his representation could try and pull an Isak. Not play, threaten to not play, threaten to be a disruption in the locker room, which I personally, there have been no reports that Nico is a distraction, a disruptor. He's been training with the team, all this sort of stuff. There's nothing to suggest outside of media reporting and his agent mouthing off that he is like a bad guy, that he's going to be like an Isak and disrupt and push for a move and all that sort of stuff. He could do that, but he ain't Alexander Isak. That could be a very career defining move and not in a good way for him. So that's
Isak, Jackson swap. Anybody say no to that deal right now?
Two disgruntled strikers and whatever. Yeah, I mean, that would be just incredible. That would be amazing. But look, I just like, come back and play, dude. You're going to play a lot. And then you have AFCON in January. And then Delap will play a lot. And then we'll figure it out after that. He should come back to Chelsea and play football for Chelsea Football Club and cook with João Pedro. That's what should happen.
That is what will most likely happen by the time people are listening to this episode of the podcast, because if Chelsea offered Munich the option to either insert the obligation or to pay outright, Nico Jackson would be a player for Bayern Munich. We'd be
Correct.
facing him in the Champions League in a few weeks. Like, that is the reality of what would have happened. So they clearly did not want him enough. And then we did see the reports that, from David Ornstein as well, that Bayern Munich were approaching Atalanta for Lookman as an option with a sizable fee option to buy for the 27-year-old attacker for the loan there. So clearly it did seem as if all they wanted is just a player on loan for cover. They did not want to necessarily buy any one player in particular, which is perfectly fine. Like, if you don't want to buy the player permanently, you give Chelsea every opportunity to make the decision. Chelsea made a decision. Chelsea want the player back. The player might be unhappy, but I mean, we also can go out and win some stuff together this season. So let's everybody find a way to break bread, to get back to the table, to find a way to reintegrate into the team, and acknowledge the fact that if Cole's not going to be available for a little bit, if Liam's not going to be available for a while, you're going to get plenty of opportunities to lead the line. Yes. So, and you're going to get a chance to do it in the Champions League, which is going to be really, really great. So let's go bond, get back together, go win a Champions League together, and be very, very excited for the season ahead. That's all I'm asking everybody to do.
And okay, so and there were a bunch of people who were like, well, Chelsea have an oral agreement with Bayern Munich, and they don't want to ruin club to club. Even if he had signed
When
on the dotted
when has
line,
club to club with Bayern Munich worked for us?
yeah, never really. Even if he had done that, even if he had signed the paperwork, done the medical, done a first training session, Chelsea could still recall him the next day. That is their obligation as the club who's loaning the player out. It would have come with a fee. They would have had to pay Bayern Munich some sort of thing to get him back. That's the way, loan cancellations usually come with some sort of, like financial incentive for the club who the player is leaving, right? That just to balance out and make things all even. But like Bayern's director even comes out and says, I'm not in a position to act. We will tell the player and his agent that they have to go back to London. He's a Chelsea player. That is the only thing that matters here. He doesn't control anything in this. They wanted the loan. You were 100% right. They wanted to stump up the cash and buy him or put in the obligation, so they had to buy him next year. Totally different story. Chelsea would be looking for a different player. But in the meantime, they have this ready-made option who could come lead the line after the international break and do it with aplomb. So why wouldn't you do that? It's the smartest move.
Well, anyway, there's a couple of just last hits then on all this transfer stuff. I mean, obviously Chelsea are working to continue to get players out, and there is a interesting one of a player on loan into Chelsea to Chelsea, which is not typically what we've done. But Buonanotte from Brighton coming in as a 20-year-old left-footed winger for the season, no option to make it a permanent move. So that feels like just some cover and a nice favor to our friends on the South Coast, I
This
guess.
this whole thing was so fucking weird. Okay. So there's this rumor midweek, and CISO fails medical to go to
Yep.
Strasbourg. Then we find out it's almost as if Brighton pulled out of the deal. I'm not saying this to be factual. I'm just saying it feels this way from outside looking in. Brighton pull out of the deal because they want this player, Buonanotte, a guy that they loaned to Leicester last season because they believed in him so much that they loaned him to Leicester to go somewhere on a season long loan because they don't want to sell him, but they don't want to keep him. Sound familiar to anybody? And then for Chelsea to sell, to get Enciso to Strasbourg, a player that they really value, they have to take this guy who wasn't great for Leicester last season into the squad. This doesn't make any sense at all. There is no player that you could buy for Strasbourg that you should take this player on loan for unless you're so convinced that he's going to potentially want out of Brighton that we could disrupt a dry loan for this guy. Like Brighton tried to do this to us with Levi Colwill, right? We gave him the dry loan to Brighton.
Mhm.
They tried to just throw a bunch of shit into the mix to get him to stay because they valued him. And then he still left at the end of the season. I do not
Yeah.
understand this whatsoever.
Well, then, and maybe other things that you do or don't understand. Lopez from Barcelona, Chelsea apparently have put forward a 40 million euro bid for the player services for the midfielder. Barcelona apparently are believed to want over 60 million. So we'll see if that does or doesn't happen in the dying hours of the transfer window. And maybe, Nick, the only other thing I would say is just that there are still several players that Chelsea will be looking to get out. That would be Ben Chilwell, Raheem Sterling, Axel Disasi, players who are still technically Chelsea players, but
Yep.
need a home. And some of those may be, some creative loans in the coming hours ahead from time of recording to time of window ending. Could be moves to countries where the window is open a little bit longer for player registration. So
Yep.
Chelsea still do have time to get some of these moves done for these players. It is just coming down to the wire for them. So, I mean, we will be on top of it when we have a Matt Law post window review special where we're looking at the ins and the outs and the deals not done in order to try to assess how well the sporting directors in Chelsea did in terms of reinforcing the side for Enzo Maresca to take on the Premier League, the Champions League, and the other competitions we're in, how well we did in getting the players off the books that we needed to, and as well as like what did we try to do? like the Simmons deal, where we kind of look like we just didn't know what we were doing for most of the window.
Yeah, one thing I just want to say about like Chelsea going to Barcelona for players. Barcelona have a registration and financial crisis, right? Barcelona have spent the last couple of seasons in a deep, deep financial hole. There's significant worry that they will never get out of this hole. Um, and they have a player registration crisis because of Andre Ter Stegen's injury and him refusing to go on like the injured
Mhm.
list. And so this is actually like I don't know much about Fermin Lopez. I'm not going to pretend that I'm like the scouting expert on Barcelona players because I frankly hate Barcelona and hate watching them. But I think that like going after a club where you know that there's like a significant weakness in the system and that is like their registration financial crisis is kind of smart. And Barcelona may not love that bid. They may come to somewhere in the middle of where they put the valuation, but they also know that their leverage is pretty limited in terms of like forcing that higher bid. And if they keep him, they're going to have to not register someone else that they really want to register. And that is a fascinating place to be. It's like Chelsea finally have leverage on something for once, which feels nice. So I would put money on something like that potentially happening because Barcelona will probably look at their end of season window and their options and go, this is like a way to get some cash flow in for an academy player and, clear up room for someone else that we want to register.
Well, look, at time of recording, I mean, Chelsea are looking pretty good in that Premier League table, Nick. I don't know if you're aware about what Chelsea have done this season in the Premier League after those first 3 games, but we are still technically in first place at time of recording on 7 points ahead of both Arsenal and Liverpool, thanks to some goal difference between the two of us, as it were. That's a great place to be. It's a great place to be heading into an international break. You kind of wish Chelsea had been able to get all 9 points available, but 7 out of those first nine, with knowing the injury issue challenges, with knowing the struggle we were going to have coming back from the Club World Cup, coming back from becoming champions of the world. This feels like a really strong start to the season. It's going to be come down now to how well do we rest up, get back right, get ready for what is going to be a brutal September in terms of fixtures that include Brentford upon the return, a trip to Bayern Munich, Manchester United away, which who knows if Amarin will not be there on the DJ ones and twos on his 11s. You have Chelsea hosting Brighton, and then you have Chelsea hosting Benfica as well to round out the month. It is going to be a very heavy set of competitions for Chelsea.
Yeah, that Bayern fixture looms large, right? We look. I am so excited for Champions League football to be back. It does feel like to me when you look at the first, like we've done our like podcast mapping for the first half of the season, almost all the way um to the festive fixtures in December. The international breaks are going to be, I think, so critical in the spacing of how teams build momentum or don't build momentum during the first 3 months of the season. This first international break comes at a time where like Chelsea, I don't think we'll have any qualms going on an international break because we've kind of done what we were set to do in the first 3 games. But you're almost going to have to look at the periods in between the international breaks as like mini seasons, right? What do I do with the next 5 matches, between Brentford and Benfica? Can I get, I don't know, 12 out of 15 points out of that, right? And I know 2 different competitions, but follow me here. Like, I would almost like set mini goals for those chunks. Hey, we got 7 out of 9 for the first chunk. Can we get 12 out of 15 or 15 out of 15 for the second chunk? Can we get 12 out of 15 for the third chunk? Because those chunks will eventually add up to good things for the season. But I think you almost have to look at them because of the disruption in the schedule as like mini seasons. And like, I would almost set like mini objectives. Hey, we're going to get Enzo Fernandez fit, truly fit and firing like he was at the end of last season by the end of October or something, right? Because of all the breaks and travel and all that sort of stuff. I'd almost do that if I were Enzo Maresca, because it's very limited time to get anything real going until you get into the festive fixtures and really go on a run where you're playing like 10, 11, 12, games in a relatively short amount of time. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how everyone adapts, especially at the top of the league, because
Mhm.
everyone's an international basically. So, injuries can happen, travel will happen. It's going to be tough.
Well, and just as everybody predicted, it is Wolves, Aston Villa, and Fulham at the bottom of the table to start the season, alongside 17th place Newcastle on 2 total points across their 3 games. Which,
Rutro.
yeah, seems like you might need a guy like Isak to lead the line there. Would be a really good addition. Would advise. But look, as we mentioned, we will have a Matt Law post window closing update. We will talk about the Chelsea women who will be filling our lives with Chelsea content over the men's international break. So we'll get a match or season preview and then also a match review coming your way as well. And don't forget to sign up for a free weekly newsletter, the Lens Blue Dispatch. Sam put out a really, really nice piece around Garnacho that, if you didn't have a chance to read, I think helps to really understand why Chelsea would want him in this side. Don't forget you can join our free or paid versions of our Discord community to enjoy the conversation with other like-minded Chelsea fans. And you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's always appreciated. It helps people find the podcast. And if you're on YouTube, leave a like, drop a comment, say something nice, or say something not so nice. That's okay. We can take it. We've got some thick skin here now. And don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified. But that's going to do it for this one. So enjoy the final hours of the transfer window. Or if you've already listened to this after the transfer window's ended, enjoy whatever ended up happening with a couple of those deals that may or may not have come to fruition.
It's almost
But
here.
get locked in, get excited. More Chelsea content coming your way. But until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.